Thank you very much, Presidential Spokesperson, ladies and gentlemen of the press, members of the party, particularly the Vice President of the party, Honorable Paulina Mpariwa, the Chairman of the party, we call him General Sox, Vachikovero, Organizing Secretary Taisekwa, ladies and gentlemen. We welcome you to this very important press conference as the Movement for Democratic Change. This press conference has been necessitated by the developments that are happening in our country. In the historic referendum of 2013, the people of Zimbabwe promulgated a new people-driven and democratic constitution. The process of making this constitution was fraught with danger, including violence and intimidation and even murder of people who were supporting the constitutional process. Despite these difficulties, the people of Zimbabwe persevered and delivered a constitution that stands among the best in the world. Our constitution has the most comprehensive Bill of Rights on the African continent. It has institutions supporting democracy. And most importantly, it prescribes term limits for both the president and the parliament. We therefore, as the MDC, regard this document as a sacrosanct whose integrity must be preserved. Following the coup of 2017, ZANU-PF promised a new era. In fact, they promised a second republic. In the eyes of many people, the government was promising that it was making a clean break from the politics that has been exercised for a long time under the First Republic of Robert Mugabe. We believed that they would uphold the principles of the rule of law, constitutionalism, and in particular, we believed that the president was going to safeguard the constitution. To our surprise, after the 2023 elections, some elements within ZANU-PF started advocating for the third term. And this third term was initially targeted at the president only. The president himself, Dr. Mnangagwa, initially distanced himself from the calls for the third term. But what has happened within ZANU-PF seemed to throw doubt on what the president actually meant. Reports also indicate that the opposition in parliament has now jumped onto the bandwagon for the calls for 2030. We as the MDC stand opposed to the calls for the extension of term of the president and of parliament. But before I go to the president, let me go to the process that led to members of parliament changing course and supporting the third term. And this happened in circumstances that we think are extremely humiliating and self-serving. And I want to remind us that the said members of parliament were invited for a party at State House. Number two, they were promised additional motor vehicles by parliament and better working conditions by parliament. Number three, they were invited to the president's farm in Kwekwe, at which place they then uttered that they were supporting the third term. Fourth, for the first time, members of the opposition were given food to distribute. They were given bags of rice. I want to state it for the sake of completeness. We cannot sacrifice principle. We cannot sacrifice the people of Zimbabwe on the altar of individual gain. The president, Mnangagwa himself, said that he was not running for the third term. But we are surprised that he allowed the ZANU-PF Congress to make a resolution for the third term. He has allowed at his own farm members of the opposition, members of ZANU-PF to still talk about the Agenda 2030 or the agenda of the third term. In our view, the president is indicating right while turning left, and we cannot accept that. The MDC is firmly opposed to the constitutional amendments for 6 reasons. First of all, the proposed amendments undermine the democratic principles enshrined in both the Constitution and international best practice. Our Constitution says a president must serve for 2 terms of 5 years. International best practices says the same. So in bringing these amendments, we are violating that national principle and international principle. Point number 1. Point number 2, these amendments primarily serve the interests of the politicians who are involved in making these amendments. First of all, to the members of parliament, they want an additional unended term. Some of them clearly are now unelectable, and they want to be cushioned against the vagaries of democratic practice. And also, if the third term is allowed, it then leads to the establishment of a dynasty. Point number 2. Point number 3, the proposed amendments are being made despite the severe economic challenges that the people of Zimbabwe are facing. Now, one of the justifications given is that both the president and the parliament are doing extremely well. In other words, in some quarters, they say President Mnangagwa has run the country so well that he deserves the third term. This is not true. This is not correct. The people of Zimbabwe are suffering. There is unemployment. There is many people cannot afford the basic necessities of life. Although the Minister of Finance tells us about how the economy is doing well, the common man and the common woman are not experiencing any of this. Then number 4, Zimbabweans were subjected to long periods of one party and one man rule under President Robert Mugabe. I think we did about 38 years under the rulership of one person. And the Zimbabweans rejected that long-serving nature of heads of state. And they said that there must be a limited term. What this amendment would do is to bring back that era that we are running away from. It is to bring back what life was under Mugabe, and this was rejected by the people of Zimbabwe. Then number 5, let's not ignore the biological issues. President Mnangagwa is 82. At the time that his term ends, the legitimate term ends, 2028, he will be 86. At the time that the proposed term, additional term ends, he will be 91. Why should Zimbabwe have that type of ruler? Zimbabweans never voted in the constitution that they wanted to be run by geriatrics. They never voted that they wanted a person to serve despite more terms, despite having served his term. Coming to President Mnangagwa, he was a key member of Mugabe's cabinet since 1980. Of course, he shares the successes and failures of the First Republic, and especially the consignment of the people of Zimbabwe to the poverty that they have been consigned to under at least the First Republic. He cannot escape blame. He and his colleagues in ZANU-PF cannot escape blame. Then number 2, President Mnangagwa took power in 2017 and completed part of Mugabe's term. Then he served another 5 years since 2018. He has been given another 5 years. I think he should be grateful. I think his family should be grateful. His party should be grateful. The people of Zimbabwe say there must be term limits, and term limits there should be. Now, Zimbabwe is under international isolation, which is point number 6. Zimbabwe is under international isolation.